welcome to this Magicka Dragonknight setup guide for the veteran Maelstrom Arena. Now, I just wanted to say briefly at the beginning of the video, thank you to everyone who's subscribed to me so far. I've gone up by 100 subscribers in the last week, and I can't tell you how overwhelming this is for me. I can't believe this many people would subscribe to me, and it's truly humbling, so thank you each and every one of you. Also, just before I begin the guide, I wanted to do a big shout out to Takadri. He's a French player on the EU server who currently holds the world first for this for veteran Maelstrom Arena on Dragonknight. I just want to give him a huge shout out, and you guys go and check his channel. It's linked in the top right corner at the moment, and yeah, just go and check him out. He's a really good player, and I hope he produces more content in the future. Anyway, beginning with my guide to the veteran Maelstrom Arena. And looking at my skills, I use Engulfing Flames. It's a brilliant AoE dot that increases the flame damage you deal to enemies. If you can catch it on multiple enemies, it's brilliant for your AoE DPS, and on single target it should be up all the time. It's a really good bread and butter ability. As you can see, I use Draw Essence. Draw Essence is a brilliant health regen. It means that I don't have to switch bars as much, which means I can increase my DPS by staying on the same bar. It also gives some minor Magicka return, which you will see is a common theme with DKs, being a problem to sustain your Magicka when you're in veteran Maelstrom playing solely. Also, you get the fire damage, which is brilliant. The fire damage is just really nice in the AoE situations, and if you can avoid spamming it for the health regens, as sometimes I might have to with the amount of damage incoming, it proves to be a really strong ability in the arena. I choose it up to use Molten Whip. Molten Whip is a brilliant ability because it increases the damage of your other abilities, also because it is a stronger ability than using something like Force Pulse or Crushing Shock, which many others choose to use. As I've recently been playing Magicka Templar quite a bit, it's not that hard for me to get used to playing in melee on most of the fights, although it may seem like a loss of DPS when you sometimes have to run out of range. Buffing your eruption or your wings to get to the enemy who's out of range of you isn't really a loss in DPS. Going on to the fourth ability, I use Elemental Drain. Elemental Drain is so important, as I've said before. To keep up your Magicka as a Magicka Dragonknight is quite difficult, even if you have the Mountain's Blessing, I believe, passive from the Dragonknight skill line for ultimate regen. It's still very difficult to keep your Magicka up. Elemental Drain is brilliant for bosses, increases your damage on bosses due to the major breach, which is brilliant for having more spell pen on bosses, something that not all classes can afford to run, as well as giving the Magicka back. It's really nice just to bung on those small elite mobs when you're in trash pools. It's a really useful ability, and I can't imagine a Magicka Dragonknight completing the arena without using this ability. On my fifth slot and both bars, I use Sea of Flames. Now, Sea of Flames is a very debated ability for Maelstrom Arena. I see people running in a light quite for the bonus Magicka, but I personally prefer Sea of Flames as the bonus DPS is really nice, and if a fireball does decide to kill an enemy, I do get that 149 Magicka back, which is just a little bit of a bonus, but personally I prefer the fact that Sea of Flames will give me an increased DPS over the inner light, as my sustain's good enough on this build. Going on to my ultimate, I use Shooting Star. This is mainly just for the Mage's Guild passive. However, if I am required to use Shooting Star, you can see me use it at some moments. It's really nice just to have that ultimate back if you're hitting multiple enemies with it, and the damage is not too bad at all, given that the whole damage from the ability is flame damage, which is heavily affected by you being a Dragonknight. Going on to the off bar, as you can see I use a Restoration Staff here, and it's much the same as my Magicka Nightblade guide. I use Rapid Regen on my first slot in order just to give myself some healing on the off bar. I pre-buff it before combat, and it's a really nice ability to have just ticking over on you as you're dealing damage. My second ability is Healing Ward. As you get low health, it is really nice to buff a Healing Ward and let your damage tick away underneath the Healing Ward while mobs still hit you on your and get absorbed by the ward's damage itself. I consider this a bread and butter ability for most Magicka builds in the Maelstrom Arena, so I can't see anyone really completing this without it, and I find it really handy when you're just hitting that 20% boundary. You could be just about to die, and then you buff your Healing Ward and you survive. Eruption is my third ability on the bar. I can't see anybody not running this. This is an amazing ability to pre-buff on portals. It does amazing damage in single target DPS, and the fact that you can have multiple enemies inside the eruption just means that you deal a lot of fire damage to them. A really strong buff. The reduced movement speed does come into play on some small occasions, but largely it's just an amazing ability to pre-buff and an amazing ability for single target DPS. On my 4th slot here I use Wings. Wings is the DK only ability of course, and it's absolutely amazing in Dragonstar Arena when you have quite a number of ranged adds. Particularly for example on the Poison Wave in round 7 when you have 3 archers spawn at once, this ability is absolutely killer and will prove really useful. I can't recommend it enough, and pre-buff it before some portals where major spawns if possible, and if not, it's just a really nice ability to use on the fly, particularly useful against some bosses who use ranged attacks where you can reflect their damage back at them, such as the first boss. Once again, as you can see on the bar I use Sea of Flames here, but I will not cover it again. And as you can see from my ultimate, I use Stand of Might. Stand of Might is the most common ultimate you see me drop. It boosts my damage, it reduces the damage coming to me, and it deals damage itself. It's an absolutely amazing ultimate to use, and I can't tell you how much burst damage I get on bosses, but the burst damage with this thing gets ridiculous sometimes. So much so that I'm actually beating some of the timers on bosses that my Magicka Nightblade sets, which I'm far more comfortable on, which is very strange to say that I could be dealing this much more damage with this ability. Now going to on the gear, as you can see I use 2 pieces of Bloodspawn, and as you can see my shoulders are in V14. If I had them in V16 I would be using them, but sadly I don't have them in V16. If you personally have them in V16 that would be absolutely brilliant. Now to explain the choice of this set, you could be running one more like Kenna, but then and 1 piece of health on your other slot. But personally I prefer to run the Bloodspawn set because the amount of physical resistance and spell resistance it gives, which you're really suffering from as a Magicka DK not having the heals per second of most of the other Magicka classes, is really nice buff. And having the 15 ultimate game, which in turn increases your sustainability because you can drop more standards, is really nice to have as well. I can't see myself using Kenna or anything else in the slot, as I feel like this 2-piece set cures the 3 major problems that Magicka Dragonknights have, which is in part your stamina recovery not being the best. You have a very weak Magicka sustain pool, which is benefited by using your ultimate more frequently. And in general you're taking a lot more damage than most of the other classes because you have a lack of heals per second, so therefore the physical damage gain is just really nice to have as a all-round ability. Then same as the Magicka Nightblade, I run 5 pieces of Julianos. I find these 5 pieces really handy. As usual you want to go heavy on the chest if possible and medium on the legs. However, it doesn't matter too much if you go medium on the legs, as you can go medium on the head as well, and that will ensure that you get the highest armor values that are available to you. Julianos itself is a really powerful set, and I believe that having more spell damage on this build given the crit is quite high isn't really needed to push the crit any higher, so the spell damage is preferable. For the rings I use the same rings that every Magicka class you should use, and I use 3 pieces of willpower, all enchanted with spell damage. As I said, the Magicka sustain is an issue, but I'm not willing to sacrifice that much spell damage in order to gain more Magicka sustain, so I opt instead for just simply trying to increase my Magicka sustain through dropping my ultimate, using potions more frequently, or for example using Draw Essence as you saw in my bars earlier. Once again, this would be a Maelstrom Inferno staff I had available to me, but sadly I don't. This is just a pre-crafted Torx pack staff. If you have a Maelstrom Inferno staff available to you, do use that. It's a very good idea that you get one as soon as possible. I really wish I could have one. Anyway, moving on to the off-bar, I also run with the Maelstrom Resto staff and Precise, very much the same as my Magicka Nightblade. As you can see, once again, this is a brilliant staff to have on the off-bar. The Magicka that you get back is really handy, particularly on the Magicka Dragonknight, as I've already touched on. And it's just lovely a heal to have ticking on your main bar, particularly as the staff also decides to proc us even when you're on the main bar. Now going towards the champion points. As you can see by my champion points distribution here, I have a lot into the apprentice in order to get the arcane well passive, but more particularly because I feel like you need quite a bit more in blessed, hence I've gone 25 into blessed on the Magicka Dragonknight, because the healing gain is really important, given that you're not healing yourself with something like funnel health or through your punching sweeps. Oh, you do not have the shields the same as the sorceress. I also run quite a bit into Elfborn, but not as much as other classes. I said that the crit was quite high on this build, which it is, but I feel like it's best to get a distribution amongst your champion points than to stack them all into something just to increase your damage. If you wanted to increase your damage a bit more, I would suggest you take points out of Blessed and put them to Elfborn, but as I said, I just don't want to die on runs mainly. As you can see here, I've got 12 into Spell Pen, and also 12 into Staff Expert, the usual two. Staff Expert because you get a lot of damage from your staff abilities, and Pen because it's always nice to have that little bit of bonus pen. And of course, as expected, you're a Dragonknight, so you'll be doing a lot of flame damage. So here you have 25% bonus with 100 points into Elemental Expert. Now for the green champion points, we have 100 into Arcanist and 67 into Magician. Now this is my common setup. You can do it either way around with 100 into Magician and 67 into Arcanist, but personally I've always preferred this more, regardless of how high your Magicka regen actually is. I find that this setup works really well for me. Looking at the red trees here, you can see that I have 34 points into quick recovery. I feel like, once again, the healing for the Magicka Dragonknight is a little bit weak, so increasing my healing is really nice on this build. As I am a Dunmer, I get less damage from fire attacks, and I'm not too worried about flame and frost attacks within the Maelstrom Arena, so I opt to only put 48 into Elemental Defender. My biggest fear is from other Magicka using attacks, so I get 17.9%. I get 17.9% into Hardy, which is 62 points here. Once again, you do get some damage over times in the Maelstrom Arena, but not too frequently, hence I have only 12 points in Fixed Skinned. I feel this is enough to cover me for most of the damage over time effects that I encounter. And finally, I use 11 points into Spell Shield. It's just a brilliant little boost, as well as it gives you the Invigorating Bash, which will also help with your health when you're having to interrupt some of those enemies as you're not using Crushing Shock. And that's it, really. Thank you very much for watching. I hope the guide's been useful. Just one other point to touch on before I all close out here, which is, as you can see below, I have 20k into my health. You don't have to go 20k health. I think I will drop to about 18.5k in the future to buff my Magicka even higher, because as you can see at the moment it's quite low. You can see too that my spell damage is quite low, but this isn't really that low. In the future I would hope that I would get more Magicka through exchanging health for Magicka. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. This has been my Maelstrom video for the Magicka Dragonknight, and I'll see you in the next one.